Hi, everyone. I just watched the discussion between Jordan Peterson and Richard Dawkins. And while it was interesting to watch, there's clearly a fundamental issue that stops them having very fruitful dialogue, I think, particularly on the subject of religious texts. And unless something fundamentally changes for at least one of them, I think it's a conversation that's never likely to proceed past first gear. And here's why I think it is. They both have limitations that the other one can't help them with as much as is needed. So the scientific elements aren't really the primary issue here. I mean, Richard Dawkins is grounded in science and facts, as we know, with his biology, but Jordan Peterson is also grounded in facts in his conversations on science and psychology and empirical reality. So I don't think that's the issue. I think perhaps the best way to see the impediment to fruitful dialogue, even though their intentions are good, I think, is maybe to think of it in terms of a Venn diagram with two circles, one for each of them, and look at the intersecting part of the circle. So Jordan Peterson has a much deeper understanding of the biblical text than Richard Dawkins and of the metaphysics underpinning these matters. Their intersection lies in their shared respect for reason, for science, and empirical reality. But Jordan Peterson brings a deeper engagement with the metaphysics, with the psychology, and the symbolic interpretation of biblical text and their meaning, their narrative, and the archetypes embedded in those texts. So he's offering a broader view on Christianity than Richard Dawkins. So you might say that Jordan Peterson's circle carries more weight in the Venn diagram because he covers a broader range of disciplines. His broader intellectual territory extends into realms that Richard Dawkins doesn't and perhaps cannot focus on. So making Jordan Peterson's circle larger and more comprehensive. Richard Dawkins I think isn't as deep a thinker as Jordan Peterson, but Richard Dawkins is better at bringing things back to the pertinent questions. Jordan Peterson gets a bit lost sometimes with his abstract tangents, which are interesting, but he can't always ground them in more rigorous, truthful propositions. But I think Peterson is more cognizant of what he doesn't understand way more comprehensively than Dawkins is. Maybe Peterson's more like a fox, and Dawkins is more like a hedgehog in this discussion, to quote the famous Isaiah Berlin essay. So Peterson's problem, it's pinning him down to whether something is true. You have to be able to ask these questions because truth is about propositions, and the proposition, does God exist? Has he made himself known in the form of Jesus in the incarnation? Did Jesus die on the cross and rise from the dead? What is the relationship on offer? They are questions of which Richard Dawkins seems to understand the necessity more than Jordan Peterson. So we end up with this situation where Jordan Peterson doesn't ask the questions in the right way, or certainly with the compulsion to apprehend their truth value, but yet ultimately he's got a lot closer to the right answers than Richard Dawkins because he's more open to God and to the propositions surrounding God, even though he doesn't want to answer them directly. Richard Dawkins does understand that Christianity has propositions that need to be answered, but he's a lot further from the right answers than Jordan Peterson because he's closed and because he doesn't realize quite what he doesn't understand. And he probably doesn't know how closed he is, really. So, all of which means that as good as they are in their respective fields of expertise, they're probably not the best pairing for a fruitful discussion on these matters. I think what both Jordan Peterson and Richard Dawkins need, and for almost opposite reasons, really, is to have an in-depth conversation with someone who understands the truth propositions of Christianity, i.e., someone who is actually a Christian, who's had the Holy Spirit and has a relationship with God, someone who could help Richard Dawkins expand his understanding of what he's missing, but satisfy him with the assurance that these are important propositional truth claims. And at the same time, help Jordan Peterson get over the line, so to speak, and realize the relationship he can have with God if he accepts the same truth propositions about who Jesus is and what he's done for us. So hopefully that's a helpful commentary on the video. But I encourage you to watch it. It was an interesting discussion, and obviously I would love to speak with either of these guys or both at any point if the opportunity ever were to arise. Thank you for watching, and I hope it was useful. See you next time.